Hello everybody, my name is the narrator, and in today's video, I was simply researching some topics of mythical creatures. However, as much popularity as the creatures from America have sprouted, there's little known, well at least to me, about Canadian folklore. And so that brought me to research a little bit more about the creatures of from the lands that I so breathe in. So, how about everyone come with me as we explore some of Canadian myths and creatures? So, as we begin, let's open up the files and see what kind of creatures really lie in Canadian waters. Starting with the first one, we are introduced in our research by fairies. Everyone knows fairies, from fairy tales to movies. We all have an idea and a perfect image of what a fairy may look like. However, in terms of Canadian description, it seems very, very different. As it reads, creature holds no wings. The creature comes in all sizes and have been glimpsed in the shape of children, adults, glowing lights, and even animals. Now, to me, this doesn't really sound like much of a fairy, more in line of something like a druid, like in Diablo, for those of you who do play. Or, for example, just a shapeshifter in general. I don't really think that the name fairy really fits within its physical appearance. However, I suppose one can argue in terms of its behavior is where it gets its name. As it reads, they are mischievous creatures that play tricks and lead you over the edges of cliffs. They'll change people, a quote says, or you'll get a fairy blast when they hit you, and then nasty stuff comes out of the wound like sticks, balls of wool, and fish bones. Very interesting. Now, the reason why they carry such a hatred towards people is simply due to them being protectors of nature and due to humans having a tendency for destruction of habitats and the natural land leads them to see humans under malice. Now, I suppose in terms of their purpose and their behavior, the reason behind their behavior, I suppose the name fairy kind of fits. On our second one that I found during my research was something called an adlet, Adlet. The adlet is an Inuit legend. The story goes that an Inuit woman lived with her father and refused to marry anyone human, that is. The woman married a giant dog, said to have white fur with red spots. If that wasn't gross enough, the two produced 10 offspring, 5 of which were dogs, and the other 5 were adlet. Bipedal dogs that walked upright like men. Obviously, her father was aghast at this front against nature and tried to kill the adlet, so she sent them inland where they became their own tribe. It's said that the adlet are cannibalistic, bloodthirsty creatures that are adept at running on top of the snow. Although this is often seen as a myth, there are rumors of strange bipedal wolves running around the Arctic, spoken in hushed tones by the locals. Which, the second time reading this story, it's still gross. First of all, obviously, it's an implication of what do you call it? As being a zoophile, isn't that right? Isn't that the word for it? I mean, the whole myth is really started by this woman just simply just not liking humans to the extent of instead, you know, providing, or I guess breeding would be a term to use with a dog. All right, an actual wolf. And then there's a part of the story where it says where the father, the dog father, was aghast to this abomination that they've made, these adlet children. It's very strange. It's very out of there. Uh, and in a very unbelievable sense, you know. So this one, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. Bloodthirsty creatures and cannibalistic. So cannibalistic is a very strange one because from what I recall, there's only 10 that were born, or no, five of were which were dogs. The other five were adlets. Okay, so it's basically five adlet children. That's not really a sustainable like uh, population count to be cannibalistic. And plus, what does count as cannibals? You know what I mean? I mean, they're half dog, half human. So if they eat, well, I guess if they either eat a dog or another person, I suppose that also counts as cannibalism. I was thinking more of the line of like, well, for it to be cannibalism, you have to eat a man slash or human slash dog person, but there's only five of them. But I guess in terms of the logic, you could also just eat just a straight up dog or a person. I guess it still counts. But yeah, I mean, just because you're like a weird kid doesn't mean you have to be like this cannibalistic, bloodthirsty creatures. I mean, that I feel like that's more of like a blame on the parents. I mean, to be fair, your father is a literal dog. Um, I'm pretty sure that would probably lead to some sort of complications. Enough to for it to be for kids to turn into cannibals and bloodthirsty murderers. I don't know. Probably not. I'm going to say probably not. Number three. These I actually have two creatures, but I've actually mixed them into one category because they're very simple and also barely a myth. Let me get started and you'll probably understand what I'm trying to say here. First, we have the devil monkey and giant beavers. That's right. The devil monkey is said to be a 4 to 6 foot tall primate with long arms, a barrel-shaped chest, and most notably a tail, which sets these creatures in the category different than a Sasquatch. While usually dark brown or black in color, the devil monkey has also had blonde or even white colors reported. Such one case in 1992 when Ian Harper encountered a strange primate while on a bike ride in his hometown of Scugog. Scugog? Okay, come on, that's a made-up name. Let's be real. There's no way that's a real place. Scugog, Ontario. Okay, anyone who lives in Ontario, can you confirm about this place? While on his way home, his dog came up his driveway, barking and baring his teeth. When Ian looked behind him, he saw what he described as a huge white monkey with willowy arms. The creature grunted and shambled off into the woods, and they never saw it again. Okay, so when it comes to the description, I had to really look up what willowy means, and essentially from Google, it's tall, thin, and graceful description. It's a description that is tall, thin, and graceful, which doesn't sound scary, honestly. I mean, to be honest, this is literally just a monkey. The only strange thing for those who don't know the animals of Canada is that we don't have monkeys. All right, we don't have any of them. I don't think. But I guess that's the only real myth, like scary part about it, is that they're just wild monkeys that probably escaped out of a zoo or something. I mean, even the descriptions themselves is it's just a monkey. It's called the giant beaver. This one originates in Manitoba. There are whispers of a fearsome water rodent of enormous size. The giant beaver is said to stand around 5 feet tall on all fours and weigh as much as an average adult male. Yeah, this is again just like the devil monkey. I'm pretty sure I like personally. I think this one is just very lazily made up rumor, and it's not very interesting. I mean, it's just like a Fallout 4 overgrown beaver. Like, you know, I feel like if we're going to have myths, especially Canadian myths, we should at least try to make something, you know. I don't really care if it's true or not, just some sort of interesting tale. You know what I mean? Something captivating. The devil monkey and the giant beaver or whatever is just two examples I really wanted to point out because they were just so basic, really. Reading the rest of the article, I noticed the rest of these creatures listed were things that I think are pretty common or well-known creatures described in many other folk tales, like sea serpents and wendigos. But one other interesting one that is listed is called the uh, Luap Garu. Garu? Uh, I don't know. Loupgarou. So, two words, by the way. Let me read it. This one takes place in Quebec. So, in 1766 to 1767, Quebec City was being terrorized. Newspaper reports from the time tell the story that an unknown beggar had come to town only to transform into a wolf-like creature and attack unsuspecting people. The largely French population immediately came to the conclusion that this must be a loup-garou, a type of werewolf that is cursed for any number of transgressions against man or God. The loup-garou, however, differ from your typical werewolf, as they can not just take on the form of a wolf, but also an ox, pig, cat, or owl. These shapeshifters are said to only be killed by hanging, beheading, or typically a silver bullet. Now, werewolf, when I was first reading this, first had a sentence, I was like, okay, this is cool. But if you're gonna make a werewolf myth, you can't just change it fundamentally to just a shapeshifter, because then it's no longer a werewolf at that point, man. Let's be honest, okay? That's a shapeshifter. That's Nimona in Quebec. All right, that's just French Nimona. Okay. In regards to further information, I had to look into a different website. This one comes from the Canadian Encyclopedia, which I guess would be a bit more credible than my other sources in terms of detail, anyway. It says here that the loup-garou is believed to be a cursed man. In the French Canadian tradition, a loup-garou is often guilty of not being a good Christian. For example, people who did not confess during Easter could be cursed to become werewolves. I suppose that also gives more detail and insight to exactly what kind of offenses to man or to God that the other website was referring to, I suppose. So, yeah, I guess if you didn't confess during Easter, uh, you'd be cursed. The spell, it also says, could last for as long as 101 days. It would take hold of the victim every evening. They were then forced to wander the countryside in animal form. The spell might be broken if someone recognizes the individual while transformed and could draw blood from the animal. Neither person could speak of this incident for fear of worse reprisal. So essentially, the curse doesn't, even if you do break it with recognizing, let's say, a significant other, that wolf right there is, I don't know, your wife or husband or perhaps your brother, your sister, or maybe a friend, right? Maybe your best friend. If you recognize it, and is it say and draw blood, or let me read this again. The spell might be broken if someone recognized the individual while transformed and could draw blood from the animal. Okay, so that's a bit of a that's an interesting way to break a curse. So not only do you have to recognize that that wolf is someone you know, but you also have to essentially stab it. To be, if you're going to draw blood, I guess the most effective weapon was to, stab, use some sort of blade. Or what you could do, I guess, you could just uh, have like a sleeping dart, shoot it, and then I guess have like a syringe. I'm assuming that's technically a workaround, I guess a more safer workaround, because if you draw blood on the animal form and they go back, will they still have the scar of you stabbing them? Right? That's kind of like my main concern um, when it comes to breaking this curse. But it's also interesting that it mentions that even when you break it, it doesn't actually get rid of it because neither person could speak of the incident for fear of worse reprisal. So essentially, yeah, you just have to keep this whole thing under wraps. Um, in terms of worse reprisal, it's not really said of the harsher punishments. I'm assuming, let's just guess here, the harsher punishments for bringing it up would maybe be having a more complex, more time consuming way of breaking the curse again. Let's say they're in werewolf form for beyond uh, in the daylight. Perhaps it's in the day and in the night, so it's just like all 24 hours, um, or something like that. Or I don't know. It's very not as informative in terms of that specific area. However, it is very interesting to see that in more detail of how you break the curse and its origins, or I guess, yeah, its origins of how you obtain it, which is, I guess, through not following through Christian practices, important ones, anyways. So, yeah, that's it, really. It's a very short video I wanted to make. Hope you guys enjoyed. Um, I really want to make more videos like this talking about mythical creatures. Well, not just mythical creatures in general, but just stories. If you guys have any kind of interesting myths, creatures, stories, even lore from a video game, I'll try to represent that the best I can. Even if it's a new video game I've never heard of, or perhaps one I am familiar with, for example, Destiny 2, Halo, or even Risk of Rain and Little Nightmares. Speaking of Little Nightmares, I tried recording the rest of the gameplay for the first game, but I'll be honest, twice in a row I tried to record. All right, there was always a problem. Okay, first time though was simply my fault. Okay, I'll take the blame for this one. Where at the time I was using the camera from my phone to record because it's higher quality. But the problem is that the file size was too big. Again, I recorded a gameplay of like an hour-long session, so transferring an hour-long video of my face to my computer, there were some problems. Unless I had to pay Google, like, I don't know, from what I remember, maybe it was like 20, 15 bucks or something. I don't know, some amount of money that I simply just was not bothered to pay. So that was a roadblock that I had to overcome. Okay, so my second solution, I recorded my face cam on the computer, but for some reason I had this mic plugged in, just like the way it is. No audio, no audio at all, just gone. And at that point, I just gave up and I just played the rest of the game by myself. I have yet to play the second game, so if you guys want a gameplay of the second Little Nightmares 2, or me playing Outlast Trials, because I also have that, feel free to comment and like the video, I suppose. Yeah.